Welcome back to Proof or Potion, the health and wellness podcast where we break down holistic health research to figure out whether a trendy hack, herb, or lifestyle tool actually has scientific proof behind it, or if it's just another feel-good potion with a sprinkle of wishful thinking. Every week, we dig into one human clinical trial, no animals, no benchtop, or sometimes a bigger systematic review or meta-analysis, and help you, the listener, figure out what the science really says. Today's episode is about two compounds from something you probably drink every day, or someone you know probably drinks every day, tea. Can L-Theanine plus caffeine, the famous tea combo, actually help kids with ADHD focus better? Or is this matcha theanine craze just internet hype?
I'm excited to learn more about this study.
Personally, I have a lot of experience with ADHD, not only for myself, but also through numerous, it's genetic, so lots of family, friends, clients, and the larger health communities that I'm connected to. It's a very common subject. And let me tell you, it can be really challenging to find medications, natural remedies, even lifestyle interventions and hacks that actually work. It's a tough condition.
Yeah, I personally don't have ADHD, but I live with a partner who does. And, I've heard all the stories about how terrible it can be to be on these meds with their side effects.
Yeah, sometimes they're life-changing and sometimes they have horrible side effects, so it's tough to get the dose right. And, there's the regular drug versus alternatives, lots of things. So if there's research on something as amazing as green tea or tea in general, these compounds, I get really excited. And personally, I love matcha. I drink it a few times a week. I'm actually sipping on a matcha right now. So matcha in particular is the shade-grown powdered version of green tea. So it's naturally higher in both L-theanine and caffeine than just a regular cup of green tea. It's also found in other teas, but people often think of matcha because it has this higher concentration just naturally and then in the powdered form. So, and I love matcha, the way it feels in my brain. It's like this smooth focus and calm energy, this like alert but calm.
Yeah. And you've also tried L-theanine as like just a supplement, right?
I've tried that along with a green tea extract to kind of mimic that natural green tea matrix. Didn't have the caffeine, so I've tried it that way. They also make just plain L-theanine powder, so you'll see it in a few different forms. But if you're wondering why they're putting green tea in, it's because that's where it's originally found. And so,
interesting.
Botanical medicine, they're trying to kind of mimic the matrix, but I personally like the matcha version the best. There's a lot of research out there looking at L-theanine versus caffeine versus the two together for ADHD and for other cognitive benefits. So, but hey, I'm just one case study.
Right.
I like that caffeine L-theanine combo and a matcha, but before we get too carried away, let's see what the science actually says.
No, I feel like I want some of this. So quick refresher. So ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, right? Affects about 5 to 10% of kids worldwide. That is a lot. It's marked by trouble with sustained attention, impulsivity, hyperactivity. Brain imaging shows that the default mode network, or the DMN, basically the mind-wandering network, lights up more in ADHD brains, especially when they're supposed to be focusing.
And the effect is even stronger with the DMN, if the subject isn't interesting to that person. So it's like more activated, and the ADHD brain just kind of checks out. There's also evidence that ADHD brains show more DMN activity in the morning when alpha brainwaves are dominant. And on the flip side, ADHD brains often show decreased activity in the CEN, or central executive network. So if you've ever heard of executive functioning, which is like the focus and task control center of the brain. So it's this imbalance, too much DMN, not enough CEN, too much floaty, dreamy, not enough task and focus.
Interesting.
So that's why the focus feels so much harder the mind wandering switch is flipped on and the executive control switch is turned down.
And that's where stimulants come in, right? So the traditional medications for ADHD include something like Ritalin or Adderall, and they calm down that DMN and boost the CEN by increasing levels of neurotransmitters like dopamine and norepinephrine, which are helping balance things out. But they also come with side effects, which is why researchers are asking, could natural compounds like L-theanine and caffeine make a dent here too?
This article comes from Nature Research. It was conducted at Texas Tech University in partnership with a few other universities. There were only 5 boys with ADHD who were not taking any stimulant medication during the study. Most were off of their usual meds during a summer break, which is when they did the study, but they had been positive responders to those medications during the school season, which was interesting. And they had to stop for at least 24 hours. Each boy did receive 4 different treatments in the study, still randomized, placebo controlled for what they call a 4-way crossover trial. So that's when each child comes in for the 4 separate sessions. They were each at least 24 hours apart and in a random order. So they didn't know which of the 4 they were getting. The 4 different groups were they either got L-theanine powder dissolved in water by itself, and it was between 70 to 230 or so milligrams. It was based on body weight. Or they got caffeine, about 50 to 200 milligrams approximately, or a combination of both powders together was the third group, and then the placebo group. The kids couldn't be fully blinded to which one they were getting because the caffeine was a little bit bitter, and they prepared them for that. While the L-theanine is essentially has no taste, and so they might have known if they were getting the caffeine with the bitter. But about an hour after drinking, they went into an fMRI or functional MRI scanner, and they did all of these tests while they were in the MRIs. 2 hours later, they did what's called the NIH Cognition Toolbox, which is just a standard battery or number of different tests that measure things like memory, attention, vocabulary, processing speed, and more. So these were comprehensive cognitive function tests, and those were outside the MRI. So we had some in the MRI, some outside. Neuroimaging researchers looked at 2 different brain networks. Like we talked about, they were looking at the DMN, which is that, network with mind wandering associated with that, and the CEN or executive network, which is tied to self-control and focus. So what happened?
What happened? Okay, so here's the big reveal. L-theanine alone.
Didn't work.
So for L-theanine alone, the kids scored better on overall cognition compared to placebo, but there was a trend toward worse inhibitory control, meaning that they had a much harder time stopping impulses. In the caffeine alone trial, we had more correct responses on attention tasks, but significantly worsened inhibitory control. Basically, it made them quicker, but much more impulsive, like really hard to control themselves. So the combination medication, of L-theanine and caffeine together, this was where we really hit the sweet spot. So we had improved overall cognition, improved sensitivity to signals, and showed a trend towards better inhibitory control. So you got like both, right?
Yeah.
Kind of balancing the negatives of each substance on its own. What did the brain scans show us? So both the L-theanine and caffeine together reduced activity in the default mode network, remember the DMN, during tasks, suggesting that there was less mind wandering. The combination especially engaged the central executive network, the CEN, which might explain why inhibitory control improved when both were taken together.
Okay, wow. I love how they had the kids do tests while inside the fMRI machine so they could actually see changes in the brain. I love when they do this.
Yes.
Brain tests are so hard. A lot of times we don't have that objective data or imaging data. And to see how they did on the tasks, both like inside and outside. I thought that was great.
Yeah. But let's talk about what they found and like what that means.
Yeah.
Right.
A little deeper.
Okay. So when the kids took L-Theanine alone, it seemed to help their thinking overall, but it might have made it a little harder for them to stop themselves from reacting. But if we looked at caffeine alone, it helped them pay attention better, but it also made their self-control worse.
Yeah. So same thing. The caffeine helped with focus, but you might actually act on your impulses more. Like that's concerning, especially when you have ADHD, you're always worried about that, about saying the wrong thing or interrupting somebody,
For sure.
But when they took them together,
Yeah.
the kids showed better thinking and attention without hurting their self-control. There was even a trend that it was going to improve self-control because they were seeing that diminished
Nice.
DMN activity, and they were seeing trends toward enhanced CEN, and that was because the study was so small. So they couldn't say it was like statistically significant, but they were seeing trends that it was also helping that executive function. So,
This might explain why kids could focus a little better
yeah, I think it absolutely
when you
explains
have
that.
less like,
Yeah.
like
That's what we're saying with the matcha too. It just like
Right.
it's the calm that then makes you feel like you're focusing better because you're not just wandering everywhere. Yeah, that completely makes sense. But since there are only 5 kids and boys, we can't say this works for everyone yet. Women in their 40s.
Darn it. So, yeah, of course, this is a super small study. We need significantly bigger studies to be sure, but it's a really good first step that shows the combination could help kids with ADHD focus better. And this is like so many people need this, right?
Yeah.
And the pros of this study, it's safe. They're natural compounds that are already widely consumed throughout the world, right? And at these doses, there's no real serious side effects reported. Also, we love when a study has imaging backing it up. Cons here, of course, there's only 5 boys. That's really tiny. So the results may not apply to girls or adults. Bummer. Also, this is a short-term single dose only. We don't really know about daily use, long-term effects, anything like that, like how we would normally dose with medications. Caffeine misuse and tolerance are real issues already. So there's a lot of caution here. Is it really wise to suggest more caffeine, especially for ADHD kiddos? And the blinding was not perfect. Kids could totally taste the caffeine. So
lots of interesting, pieces to this to consider. And I think, after hearing all this, can we say, what do you think? Is the L-theanine plus caffeine combo specifically for ADHD proof or potion?
So for me, I'd say it's early proof of concept, right? But it's not ready for prime time, right?
No.
It's promising, but way too small to really be conclusive.
Yeah.
Especially single dose, especially kiddos.
Yeah, I totally agree. Definitely with kids, even adults. And caffeine, everyone has thoughts and feelings about that too. I mean, stimulants too. It's all a little bit controversial, and
For sure.
I just love that there's potential, and having had personal experience with this one, I can tell you that even from an anxiety standpoint, a matcha just makes me feel so calm, so much clearer. And for me, it does even help with that impulse control of not saying something, just blurting something out or rambling less or getting things more accurate. So I really appreciate that. And I think it's really cool that they're looking into this. They said it's interesting. They discontinued because of funding. So they were only able to enroll the 5 boys. And of course, there's not always as much money in the natural stuff if it can't be a pharmaceutical drug. So hopefully we'll get some more data in the future. So
all right, friends, thank you so much for hanging out with us. Let us know what you think, proof or potion for this one, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.